What is going on? Over the past 3 months, I have spent over 1,000 hours on Claude Code. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you everything I wish I knew from day one that would have accelerated my progress and been able to 100x my output in what I was getting. So let me walk through what we're going to cover today. We got a bunch of stuff. So the first thing is section 1 is just the regular Claude Code desktop app versus an IDE versus a terminal. And so the regular desktop app, this is regular, just Claude. And then you can switch over to Cowork, which is one step up, I would say, being able to dip your toe in the water to be able to connect your Google Drive and your PowerPoint and your Gmail and some of these other tools. This is going to be a great step up and probably something you're not even using right now. If you're trying to now build products, micro SaaS, you want to be connecting a bunch of these different tools together to create your own custom automation workflow that suits your style, suits your team, linking up your project management system, creating a nice landing page, etc. Let's go into Claude Code. And the nice benefit here compared to the IDE and the terminal, which I'll discuss later, is that it's very digestible and it looks exactly like regular Claude, but now you're able to build software apps. And so I just said real quick, hey, make me a LinkedIn post, and it pulls up all of my information, all I had, which I'll show you later, on what it needs to make a LinkedIn post. Now, if we look at the next thing, which was the IDE, so let me show you what that is. And there's a bunch out there. You could be using VS Code, Cursor. I'm specifically using anti-gravity in this situation. And what I really like about this is that it's really easy for me to see my files in my particular folder. So earlier we were talking about, hey, make me that LinkedIn post, and I couldn't really see what files I had in there. But if I look here and go into my content creation, LinkedIn content, directives, I have my file that essentially this MD file tells Claude exactly what to do. And so there's a lot more visibility on what's going on behind the scenes. And then also the execution. So I have a writer agent, agent to check for particular things when editing, putting it into my CRM, etc. So it's very easy for me to mentally organize everything. And the second thing that is super beneficial here is that I'm able to have multiple Claude Code conversations here all going at once. So you could see the power of this where I say, hey, make me LinkedIn post. Hey, can you pull up my cold email directives? Hey, can you draft, what's another thing? Can you look at my voice AI? So now if you were looking at the regular Claude Code before, I was not able to have multiple conversations going at once in one view. You can have it in a sidebar, but then it gets very mentally taxing of all the context switching. So now you can understand the power of this, where you could have 5 different agents doing different things for your business. One could be doing project management, one could be doing software engineering, one could be doing marketing. On top of what makes the IDE really nice is that you're not locked into just Claude. So let's say you are a Codex, which is OpenAI, ChatGPT's version of all of this. If you take a look, I can also have OpenAI's version going at the same time. The last thing is that, what if I want to be using, this is Google anti-gravity, so this is Gemini specific, so this is Google has their own version as well, and I can have that on the sidebar right here. So can you make me a plan for a YouTube video that I'm about to make? So now you can have Gemini, Claude, and Codex, the 3 powerhouses, all in one pane view, being able to scan and see everything that's going on in overview and orchestrate. So they can all do that, which is excellent. Now, the one thing which I'm going to talk about later, and the downside, which is why I switched out of it, is because these models and these tools have a certain bandwidth. So let's say 100, they have 100% is their bandwidth, and using this, because it's so visually digestible, it has all of these bells and whistles to make it as easy as possible to work inside of it. It takes up some of that bandwidth. called a context window. So let's say before you even start, because the application uses 5% of Claude's power before you even start. And that's why I switched over to a terminal, which is a pure CLI performance, and I'll show you that right here. This is the terminal, and what I really like about this is that when you're using something like this, it's not sexy, it's not visually appealing, and this is purely, you start with a fresh context, but it doesn't take up any additional performance when you're trying to do tasks. What I also really like about this is that you can switch between, you can also do this in the IDE, but switch between things very easily. And you could also in the same way be spinning up, let's format this. You could be spinning up multiple windows. See how many windows that I could have of Claude Code going at once here. I could be spinning up 8, 10, 20, 30 new conversations, and this is just in one pane where now you could be switching between 1, 2. So you could ultimately have 40, 50, 60 different conversations going, different agents working on your business at the same time. So this is the power of being able to have a team of 1 or 2 and turn that into 100. So that's the terminal. Let's go back. That is something I wanted to discuss because if I were you, I would just start off with the desktop app and you can level up to IDE, and this is where some people get. And then of course, if you want to take it to that next level, terminal is where you want to go. One thing that's really nice about the terminal is that it's very, if you know what you're doing, it's just terminal said, hey Claude, look in these files and do this. And it doesn't really beat around the bush, and it doesn't look for unnecessary random stuff that sometimes it will in the IDE. Section 2 is that if you are considering what is possible with Claude and you're thinking, can I automate this? Can I do this? The answer is, my answer is if you can do it on a computer, yes. But specifically with Claude Code, if you want it done very reliably, if it has an API, you can do it. Because that's what Claude is doing on the back end of all of these things, is that it's orchestrating all of these APIs from different softwares together. And so for an example, let's just look at, let's say you're like, can I do something with Notion and Notion's API? Boom, right here, Notion API. And here it tells you everything that you can do. So here you can create a new file, a new database, a new page. So Notion's very API friendly, where you can use Claude Code to automate everything that you do with Notion. Or similarly, let's look at Google Sheets. It's like Google Sheets API. Of course they have an API, and they can tell you everything that you do here. So that is where I would start, is if you are like, can I automate this? Can I not? Okay, section 3 is LLMs versus Python, probabilistic versus deterministic. This is extremely important for understanding what type of file that you need to use on the back end for Claude Code to get the outputs that you want. So for an example, the best way to think about it is if it requires some type of judgment, you're going to use an LLM. If it's rule-based, you're going to use Python. So for an example for rule-based is if the sales rep closes something for over $10,000, give them 10%. And so 100 out of 100 times, it is going to give them the 10% of whatever they close. That's because it's rule-based, it's very deterministic. Probabilistic, if you ran that same thing of if this sales rep closes a deal for over $10,000, give them 10%, what would I get if I sold a $12,000 deal? 80% of the time it'll say, okay, $1,200. Sometimes they'll say, well, it depends what your commission structure is, or it depends on why. You might say, typically we'll see a 5 to 15% range. So it'll give you a random answer because it's always scanning its knowledge base to give you, and scanning all these probabilities and guessing as to what the right answer is and what you're looking for. So that's why you see hallucinations, and sometimes that Claude can make wrong assumptions and guesses and you're like, what the hell? So that is why when you're thinking about what to use and telling Claude what to use is, do we want to use an LLM because we want it to make decisions on our behalf? Or is it something that's very, if X then Y, we want to be using Python? The fourth thing is, garbage in equals garbage out. And so AI is only going to give you the output, the quality of output as the quality of input you give it. So many times I see people, and I've continued to get better at this over time, and it's been incredible to see the difference, but vague input is going to be vague output. So for an example, if you say, write me a good story that I like, if you put that, and so many times I see business owners, write me a good email. When you say, write me a good story that I like, what makes a good story? Is it long? Is it short? Is it about mystery? Is it about science fiction? And also, that I like. Luckily, Claude has a memory, so it knows your preferences, but a lot of the times, they might not have this answer. What do you like? So that's why you get bad output. And so a precise one would be, hey, write me a mystery thriller that's 150 words, that has a supernova alien and time travel, because I'm really into that. And I want it to be similar to Star Wars, and the main character to be like Luke Skywalker. I don't know. How much more precise of an output of exactly what you're looking for, and that story is going to be exactly what you want. So this is not about the technical aspect. It's about your ability to articulate to an AI. And if you cannot articulate it to a human or on paper, how the hell is a machine going to know what you want and build anything for you? So again, be very clear what you're putting into the AI. That gets me to my second point, is that know your process and start in plan mode. Let me show you what that means. So if I go to my IDE, let's start super fresh. A lot of the times, you could see right here in this bottom left corner, there's 3 options where you have ask before edits, edit automatically, plan mode, and bypass permission. So asking before edits and bypassing permissions. So typically people will just YOLO it from the start and go right into just, hey, make me a LinkedIn post. And just start chatting back and forth. It'll give you a LinkedIn post and you're like, no, I don't want it like this. And then it's gonna go off and start doing things right away. Now, if you go into and start in plan mode, hey, write me a LinkedIn post, it's gonna be around this YouTube video, around things that I wish I knew about Claude Code, and read only my LinkedIn content file. So this is asking before edits, or even if you just did bypass permissions, it's going to be, Claude said, okay, I read what I need, let's go, let's hammer. But plan mode is, okay, let me read everything, let me make sure that I have all the necessary context, let me see what you're asking for. Let me try to find everything that I need to give you the best possible plan so that we can execute and be on the same page. So I was looking at my stats over the past, see, it's even asking me questions. This is just a, hey, what do you want to post? Let's just go. Are there 2 to 3 specific sections from the video that you want to highlight, or should I pick the most compelling ones? Oh, you can pick the best. What is the CTA? Boom. And so I was looking at the stats on my workflow. I was spending an average of 72 minutes on the plan before even executing on anything. And this is so important because fixing mistakes later is going to take 10 times more investment than just reviewing the plan up front. So you want to make sure that you and Claude are on the same page. So it gives me the option, accept this plan, no, keep planning. Here's what it said, Claude is telling you, here is exactly what I'm going to do. Steps. We're gonna look at our hook suggestions, generate 3 to 5 hooks, the mix of styles. It's also very helpful for you to see Claude's thinking as well. So draft the post, we're gonna use these agents, then we're gonna have user review. So it's going to sequentially tell you in order what's going on, whereas here it's just me, similar to just regularly using Claude and chatting back and forth. The benefit of this is that this was very simple, but if you said, something very grand, like, hey, I want you to build out my entire business development function, or I want you to build out my entire content creation system, you probably want to see a plan. And if you are doing this, please read the fucking plan. Read the plan so that you know exactly what it's going to do. Don't just, you saw how it gave me an option, hey, you want to accept the plan, and just, you don't even read it? Read the fucking plan. Can't tell you how many times I've seen Claude like miss some things. I'm like, hey, wait, did you not think about this? Or what about this and this and this? So it's about having a conversation to make sure that you have exactly what you're looking for so that it can execute. The best way I would think about this is that let's say you had an intern write you do a big project for you, and you said, hey, make me a plan for it on exactly what you're gonna do. The intern writes the plan in every single detail on exactly what it's going to do to execute on this project. You don't even read it, and you say, looks good, intern. And it does everything that it said it was in the plan, and you go, yo, what the hell is this? This is not what I asked for. When you didn't even review the plan. It's like the intern's like, yo, I just did everything, I laid it out for you. What do you mean? So going back and fixing that intern's mistakes after they've already built everything and built that entire project is going to be 10 times more costly than if you just read the plan and said, actually, no, we wanted this like this. Start in plan mode and read the fucking plan. Next is Claude MD is your system prompt. So if we look at my anti-gravity, let's go to my Claude MD. This is essentially telling Claude on the back end, it's almost like its memory system and also its instruction layer. So I have Claude, every time I build something, we're gonna use a 3-layer architecture. These are my operating principles, and this is how I organize my files. Now, I have multiple Claude MDs across different, if we go here, I have a different Claude MD. If we go into my lead generation, cold email, I have a different Claude MD. So whenever I talk about cold email, quick start, I just dropped a new ICP file, so this is like, whenever I say that to Claude, it said, okay, now that's my trigger, I should open up this Claude MD. And so it's helpful to be able to split out different types of Claude MD files. The reason why you want to split out all of these different files, Claude MD files, is because let's say you're working on a task for content creation. Well, you don't need everything about your life story and your clients and maybe your clients, but your finances and all of this in the file that's just working on content creation. You're gonna, what they call bloat the context window, which means you are overloading Claude with unnecessary information, which is going to deteriorate its performance. That's why from my file folder structure, when we have lead generation, we have different things for N8N, sales process, each one of those has the minimum amount of necessary information that Claude needs to go and execute well. And it's important that you use a Claude MD file because it's going to base everything that you instruct it to do to get you the outputs that you want. So if I didn't have any of this, then Claude would just be randomly going off and doing its own thing. So this is, again, if you treat Claude like an intern, this is the instructions, the SOP that you're gonna give it. All right. Let's go to managing context windows. So I mentioned it earlier, but Claude has a limited amount of space that you can input information, but also when it executes on certain tasks, that uses the context window. So it has a limited amount of bandwidth. And there are things that we can do on our end to make sure that we don't utilize or waste Claude's limited bandwidth by giving it information that it doesn't need. So let's pull this up and we can look at context. And you can see the context window or usage here is out of 200,000 tokens, we're already using 38.1 thousand. And it gives you the breakdown on some of these things. So free space, we have 64.4%. System prompt, 3.3. My system tools, MCP tools, which we'll get into. And so if I told Claude to read a million different files, I'll just show you right here. Hey, Claude, can you read all of my lead generation cold email files? So we're gonna let it do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to explain what this means. So I have it like a phone call analogy where if I said, hey, Claude, can you call my mom? Here's my life story and her life story. Here's a huge document, all that. That might take 30% of Claude's window. And now it has to use all this information to be able to make the phone call, which also takes up bandwidth. Now when I say, hey, Claude, here, can you now call my dad? Here's all my information on me, my dad, our relationship, what's been going on lately, our life. And can you do it with my brother and my sister too? And so Claude's like, but I have to juggle all these different things. And then it's like, you're gonna confuse the shit out of Claude. And now you're gonna, each thing, the document that you're handing, the stuff about your mom, the stuff about your dad, me, It's like more information, that's taking up the context window. And so when that relates to your business, it's, hey, review all my marketing materials. Hey, review all my sales materials. Hey, review all this just to make me an email draft. It's gonna make mistakes. So you wanna be very careful about managing your context window, because I used 100% of my context from this. So I had it read all of these files. And if we look at context again, all I did was read files in this example. All I had to do was read files, and I went from 38.1K out of 200K to 159 to 200. So since I had it, so you have to be very careful. Now, see, the problem with this is that now I don't have any wiggle room to be able to execute on the task that I want. Now I only have 40,000 tokens to be able to actually do. I haven't even asked it to do anything yet. Be very careful about that, and I'll show you how exactly you can manage your context window. I want to briefly touch on MCPs, because this is something that can eat your context window fast. So MCP is Model Context Protocol, and it makes it very easy for Claude to be able to connect to your Notion, your project management system, your CRM, and all of these things very seamlessly. Because what it's doing is that it's loading all of the information. Let's say Notion, like I showed you earlier, that entire page of everything that you need to know to connect to APIs and all that. Well, what it's doing is it's loading all of that information right away so that Claude can have it readily available for it to use. And so, like I showed you in the example earlier, if information is going to be readily available, it's almost as if it read all of these things right away. And so you can see how it can be dangerous, because if you just had Claude, plenty of room for you to work, Notion MCP connected, now it read all those Notion files. Well, what if you had Gmail, Google Sheets, Slack? Now you don't really, and these might be something you don't need for the particular task you're trying to execute on. And now you don't have a lot of wiggle room to be able to, for Claude to be able to execute on that specific task in a high-performing manner. Because you always want to be, performance deteriorates at this 50 to 60% use. So you'll want to be keeping that in mind. So that's the game. Another analogy is like packing a bag for every trip. So if you're going to the beach and you pack your ski gear and your hiking gear, and you're not even going to use it going to the beach, like, why did you pack it? And that's the same thing with you giving Claude all these random files and information that it's not going to need or use. Okay, the next section is this 3-layer architecture on how we want to organize and orchestrate Claude so that it makes it perform and get the outputs in the way that we want. So it's 3 layers: is the instructions, the orchestration, and the execution. So the instruction layer is your markdown files, which I showed you earlier, is your Claude MD, which is the way that you're going to put all of your SOPs and exactly line by line. If I talk about cold email, I want you to read this file. If I talk about content creation, I want you to look at everything that I've written in the past, and I want you to analyze my voice. Here's how I talk. Here's my brand voice. Put that all in your MD file. It doesn't have to be Claude MD specifically. For an example, if we look at content creation directives, I have my Claude MD, but then I also have LinkedIn Content Workflow MD, which is short for Markdown, which is just plain text. So when I talk about instructions, this is your first layer: is user wants to create a LinkedIn post. We get these inputs. This is the step 1 that we need to do. This is the step 2 that we need to do. This is the step 3 that we need to do. And so that is the instruction layers. Then it's the orchestration layers, where Claude says, okay, within here, I need to grab the writing style. I need to grab my LinkedIn writing guidelines. So from this initial MD file, now it's going to orchestrate, okay, what do I need to grab for me to only get the relevant information I need to be able to execute on this task? And that's where it comes in and grabs. So it's saying, hey, I need to read the writing style guidelines, I need to write the LinkedIn writing guidelines, the hook library, the hook writing guidelines. And then the last part is execution. So now that we know exactly what we have to do, we have the draft post PY, which is short for Python, to be able to then execute on exactly what we're doing. So step 1 was we have all the instructions, orchestration, grab all these files, execute on it. And so I constructed my Claude in a way to automatically do that every single time, and it starts in my Claude MD, my 3-layer architecture, do this these 3 things every single time so that I have predictability and Claude doesn't go off the rails. So that's something that I would incorporate in your best practices as well. The next thing is skills, which are reusable playbooks that teach Claude on how to do specific tasks. And each one is just a markdown file with instructions, which I showed you similar with the LinkedIn content creation. So there are 2 ways that skills get triggered, is that you can invoke them directly, and I'll show you that in a second here. Claude runs the playbook, or within your markdown file, you say, hey, run this skill, and it will do it automatically on your behalf. And so that's why it's important to have these skills where if you have 5 skills in a row, you can string them all together to create that automation or workflow that you're looking. And so that's really powerful, is that you don't have to keep typing the same thing over and over to Claude. When it's a repeatable process, that's when you turn it into an MD or a markdown file, and it will do it all in the background for you. So let's pull this up. Something that was really annoying was I was using this one LinkedIn API, and I would have to tell it, read all the API documentation, read all the API documentation, read all the API documentation. And then it would go off and read a bunch of random other shit that it just didn't need. So I said, okay, I'm gonna turn this into a skill. LinkedIn Sales Nav reference. So it loads everything about the minimum amount that it needs. So API reference loaded, 23 endpoints ready. This is important because once again, when Claude reads a bunch of information and it grabs all this stuff, it bloats the context window. So this is the best way that you can manage the context window. But there's also other stuff that you can do. For an example, if I had a CSV, I would say, I'd keep having to tell it, hey, can you validate these emails? Can you validate these emails? Can you validate these emails? So now I just created a skill, email waterfall, or email copy. This is if I need to create email copy quickly, create a rough draft, it'll read what it needs and it'll execute on what I need to do. So use skills. The reason why is that you want to be in control of what Claude is doing. And so you don't want Claude to be doing some random stuff on its own. And that's why telling it, directing it with skills and saying, hey, read these specific files, these markdown files, that is where the magic is. So some business use cases might be client onboarding. You're working with multiple clients, so each with their tools, credentials, and everything. So it's like you pull up client John, and it'll only have John's information. And you pull up client Jim, and it'll only give you Jim's information. So it's very easy to segment and be able to be in control of what Claude is doing. All right, now we're gonna talk about hooks. So hooks are automatic triggers that fire after specific moments where Claude Code is working. So the first one is pre-tool use. Is before Claude does anything, it fires right before Claude runs a command or edits a file, so you can block something entirely. So if Claude is going to delete everything about your business, before it does that, if you have a hook in there saying, whoa, were you about to delete everything about his business? And it'll say, stop, don't do that. And it'll do that automatically on your behalf without you having to look. So it's almost like having a second agent being on behind the scenes, checking Claude's shit. Then there's after post-tool use. So after Claude executes on your specific project, after it all does that, it can follow up and spawn and create a new sub-agent to check Claude's work. Hey, did you do the right things here? Did you do what I tell you to do? And so you can have agents reviewing your own agent's work rather than you having to do it. So that's a great way to use hooks. And when Claude's sometimes Claude can be like, oh, I'm tired, man. I don't want to keep going. And it'll just kind of stop. And that's when the hook says, yo, you're not done yet. Keep going. And there's also times where Claude is like, oh, I'm getting lazy because your context window is about 50%. He's like, I'm getting lazy. I'm gonna just cut corners. He said I should include this. I don't really want to. But then the hook's like, yo, you gotta finish that shit out. And then the last one is when you have a session open, so you want to inject particular context right away, so that again, we only read the minimum amount of information that we need to be able to execute on that task. These are the 4 ways that you can use hooks. And again, it turns hooks into Claude follows the rules sometimes to rules are now mechanically enforced because we want to be in control. The moment that we are not in control, we are not going to get the outputs that we want. So if you've ever told Claude, hey, don't do this, and then it still did it, that's the problem that hooks can solve, because the hook will check his shit and be like, yo, what are you doing? Agents for sub-agents. There's a lot of hype around agents, and for 99% of use cases, you actually don't need full agents. And so there are two different ways that there are two different management structures and ways that you can orchestrate your AI agents. And similar to the deterministic versus probabilistic using Pythons or LLMs, you want to know what your end goal is and what you're trying to achieve so that you can take the right approach. Because agents are very expensive. And so when you tell Claude to delegate a task, it hands the work off. So for an example, when I was creating my LinkedIn content, there was this high-level LinkedIn content AI agent saying, okay, here's all the information. Hey, writer, give it to the writer. Hey, write it. The writer will give it back to the top guy. Okay, now give it to the editor. Okay, now the editor took a look at it, gave it back to the top level guy, and says the manager, and says, let's give it back to the writer. And so you have this manager who's giving almost like these freelancers, hey, freelance writer, write this, let me see it. Okay, freelance editor. And so the editor and the writer don't necessarily have to talk to each other. And so it's about the high-level manager delegating the task, getting it, and reporting back. It's very token efficient, and it's almost like this assembly line. Now, imagine agent teams as, remember when I showed you in the IDE where I had like 18 different conversations at once? Well, that would be each one is a different agent, all doing its same one thing, and each one has a fresh context window, and they are all communicating with each other. And they can all read each other's work. They can all see what everyone is doing. It's best for work that spans multiple layers, and you all need to communicate together, move together. And let's say you're building a client-facing dashboard, and one person's building the back-end stuff, one person's building what the front-end design looks like, one person's writing the email copy, one person's testing all the buttons. And so they need to be all in lockstep with each other to make sure, hey, I'm making this button. Can you connect it on the back end? Oh, hey, can you write what we're putting on the button? Hey, can you make sure that, so they all need to be communicating. But the thing is that it's going to get very expensive very fast because now you have 20 different people using all of your Claude rather than just that one Claude dishing it out to different mini versions of Claude. And so a lot of the times you don't actually need an agent team. This is for very complicated, complex work where everyone needs to be communicating with each other. And you likely just need, if it's very more linear, you can just use sub-agents. So don't buy into that hype. This might be the most impactful thing that I have adopted in Claude is just the assumption that Claude is wrong and that Claude is your intern and that it makes a lot of mistakes. And so whenever you finish something with Claude, so I have a specific skill called verify, and so I didn't really do anything in this situation, but what it will do is say, here are all of the checkpoints that you need to go through to be able to verify your work before giving it back to me. Code quality, input, output, completeness. Did I go through everything that I said I was going to do so we don't take shortcuts? Testing and execution. Did I test it? Or did I just say I built it, which a lot of the times it says, hey, I just built it, here you go, and it doesn't do any testing. And then half of it is broken. Integration integrity. Were we making all the right calls? Were we building all the right things? Did I take any shortcuts? Did I match exactly what you told me to do? Is it ready to deploy? So that is the best way. I kept telling it, hey, can you verify this? Can you verify that? Can you verify this? Now we just turned it into a skill, which is a markdown file, and it does that for you. So that is number one. And this is what I was getting to is the question everything. It was that prove to me that you built everything in the way that you should have. This is an extra added layer. And there's been so many times where Claude's like, I'm done. I built it. And you're like, prove to me it works. And then it'll go and like actually do the testing again and be like, oh, wait, there was a mistake here. Oh, I built this wrong. And it will automatically fix all of these bugs for you. And you can say, how do I know that you built this in the best way possible? And it will come up with all of these different errors, or it will find all these different errors. And then it learns based on those errors. And now you can say again, knowing what you know now, go back and apply this level of thinking to the rest of the solution. And it will make it even more bulletproof because now it says, oh, wait, if there was this kind of error here, let me look through here again. And it'll do all these things. And And if you do that multiple times, it'll give you a very complete solution. So I know a lot of what I talked about actually wasn't even about within Claude Code, but it's more about the thinking behind how you should go about orchestrating these AI agents, because that is where the leverage is. Because execution is becoming a commodity. The higher level play and the leverage is really understanding knowing what to build and the strategy behind it, plan mode, all of these things, so that you can have Claude execute in the exact way that you want. So hope that was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.